Some of you have more experience or know more than we do. That's great. That's fine. We're just trying to help. And we do get a lot of questions from people who are just maybe a same stage or a little stage beyond or behind, where we are now. So that's the reason why I don't want anyone to think anything arrogant about what we're trying to say. I'm not going to be able to go through all these verses again. It'll take me too long. But I talked through these verses in Ephesians 6, so you're welcome to look at them, study them. This is the incentive God provides. Bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord right there. So you need to kind of understand that. You're supposed to nurture and admonish. It's not all just being kind and nice and give what they want all the time. You also have to nurture, which is give what they need. So what did we do last week? I deleted all the slides. My wife says we take too long. So she'll come up. I think we should throw some ideas out. Michelle, come on up right here. Make sure the mic's on. You remember last week she was trying to talk without the mic being on. So I solved the problem for her. All right, so here we go. Last week we talked about some practical things. So the first thing this week we're going to throw out there is set boundaries. Now this sounds very easy to do. But you'll notice if you ever supervised anyone, whether it's work, babysitting, it's very difficult to set boundaries and then maintain them. Now there's even all sorts of scientific proof and different things, and I'm not trying to do it. I find that stuff interesting, you may not. But if you tell someone they cannot have something, they instantly want it more. They just do. So sometimes you don't want to be too negative on you can't have, you can't have, you can't have it. If you say that too much, you're just increasing their desire to have it. They've done all these studies where they put a child in a room with two toys, very similar in like styles, two different cars, or maybe for a girl, two different things, and they'll just set them there and they watch which one the child plays with. Then they'll put them in there with a small barrier, clear barrier in between where the child can easily reach over and grab the other one. And the child at that point picks one and is happy with it. But then they put the child in there with two toys and they put them inside with a clear barrier where they can see the other toy but cannot get it. Every time they do it, you know what that child does? Goes crazy to get the other toy he can't have. So as you understand this, when you set boundaries, you do have to make it where you're setting some positive boundaries and you're firm. The other thing they say is if you're going to give someone access, then take it away and breach your value. But if you're strict to start with and then gradually let off, people understand that. It's just like if you tell a child you can sleep in as late as you want, you get up anytime you want. When you try to change that, it's much more difficult than just have a routine and a schedule. As difficult as you do need to set boundaries. Children need to know that there is a set pattern and that you're in control. Do you have anything thrown out this one? Not yet. She's waiting. All right. So I know it sounds simple, but it's absolutely set boundaries. In the Garden of Eden, what did Adam and Eve have? Everything they wanted, right? But except what? One tree. And what did that tree want? The devil came and enticed them, and they wanted it. So you look over and over and over again. You have to understand what they have, but don't sit there all the time. Don't take your child and say, no, 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 no. Give it some options around that, distract it from it, but you do have boundaries where you do have to set. I mean, I can tell the story once again where you and Dave, when he was little, and he kept touching.
He was so little. But we had, back in the olden days when you had stereos at your house, we had a stereo that was at level for him, and it had a CD player, and so we would push the button, and then the CD player would open, and the tray would spin, and he thought this was just fascinating, but I did not want him to do that, so we spent, oh my word, it seemed like forever. I'm sure it was at least an hour where he would touch it, I would tell him no, and snap his hand, and then he would touch it again. He would reach for it, I would say no, he would look at me and touch it anyway. It was terrible, terrible. I was crying, he was crying, but he was still touching. So, finally, it really had been so long, but he reached for it, he looked at me, I said, David, no. Then he pulled his hand back, dissolved into tears. He crawled over into my lap and all was well. But it was very important at that moment that I did not back down because I knew even though it was only a stereo and he was only like one, I had to show that when I said no, I meant it.
And the nice thing is, seriously, if you set boundaries when they're that young, frankly, Dave does not remember that story. So all they know in their mind when they start comprehending things is when mom and dad say no means no. So you have to establish the boundaries, and the sooner you do that, you can always lighten up, you can always let up. But if you're, that's why to us, we haven't done the summertime where they can have any schedule they want, have just chaos right now, you can play video games as long as they want, because then when you try to then implement structure again, it becomes harder. If you do that, I'm not criticizing you, I'm just saying for us, we have tried to maintain structure, maintain that kind of semblance of order all the time for that reason. We better keep going. Next, provide children with a balanced lifestyle. This is tough because you have to give them what they need. If you give children only what they want, it's not going to be a healthy choice. This is true when they eat, it's true with their desires and what they want to do, but you have to give them what they need, not just what they want. If a child does not want to do something, it is absolutely appropriate to make them do it. This could be for what they have to eat, this could be what they have to exercise, what's good for their bodies. It's all of a sudden what they need. You need to give them a balanced lifestyle. That's why we're big proponents of reading. We're big proponents of exercise. We're big proponents of getting outside and doing something. We're proponents of making them have chores and absolutely things like that. We are big on that, and we feel like they need that type of balanced lifestyle. Next, provide nutritious food and not just junk food. And this is something, again, I'm not harping on at anyone. This is something we are still trying to figure out. But some parents, let me tell you, Joey, again, I keep telling you, he's becoming like a little bit of a psycho on this. But he's so angry. Listen to a podcast this week of our government subsidizes the sugar industry. And they push it so much to provide them to the poor, which is crippling, and it's the biggest cost for all of our health care. So you see that, it's very frustrating. The biggest number one crop in the world, you said, was sugarcane. Sugarcane. So you see it, and I'm not telling you no one here can eat sugar, but I think you have to understand, you have to provide this. It is more difficult to make, and it's more expensive when you do it. It's very easy to give your kids something that's full of sugar and just say, hey, eat this all the time. But that does give them mood swings, it does give them an unhealthy diet, and it does alter their attention span, so you have to understand some of it. Now, we have tried to get on this journey and try to get better and better. Where you're at on that, I'm not judging you. Some of you probably are far along and better than I am. That's fine. Some of you are not. But you have to work at this because you cannot give your child and pump them with all the sugar and then get angry at them when they're a little bit out of control or they have mood swings and things like that. All right, next, get physical exercise and get outdoors. This is something that a lot of people don't. It is amazing to me that people do not get outdoors and there's no physical activity. And this is true, guys, girls, whatever you have. If you never get outdoors, that's what God made. And I say, well, God made the indoors too, but He provided the outdoors if you look, and that's what He wants. Get outdoors some. There should be some comfortable feeling when you're outdoors, whether it's taking a walk, taking a hike, going running, just enjoying the outdoors, appreciating the outdoors. When you go outside and you see, even on our trip where we just were in Colorado, well, we look forward to it. My dad would have really enjoyed this, and again, Pete sometimes thinks like my dad. Pete has this where, as soon as we went there the first night, he went out there, he said, hey, there's the Big Dipper. Man, here's this planet, and you can do this. And Pete took us out there and he was showing the different planets. I don't think we could see it, but there was one that was a comet that she said you could not see for amazing number of years. Once in a lifetime, it was coming across the low in the horizon. But it was been higher a couple weeks before that. But when we saw millions, man, it was so many stars. When you see that many stars, I don't sit there anymore and think, God's up there. It's overwhelming. It's motivating to think God is in control. Look at how big God is. When you see the mountains that we climbed and the beauty and it's just how big everything is, how vast, it impresses upon my heart and my conscience that God is amazing. That's big. And when you don't, when you sit inside, you're always isolated, everything's in that controlled environment, whether it's video game or TV, you do lose some of that. You become dependent on that.
Yeah, and so I think it's also important that moms, you don't tell your kids to go outside and then lock the door so they can't get back inside. It's more like, let's go outside together. Let's do these things together. Let's move around together, take a walk, go to the park, push them on the swings. But don't just send them outside, go with and help them have fun.
Yeah, how many people have ever pushed their kid in the swing and as soon as it stops, more? You ever done that before? Your arm feels like it's gonna fall off. Is that just me? Okay, I'm the only one. Okay, thank you very much for staying behind me on that one. All right, next. Enjoy a daily family dinner. Daily is probably a stretch. You should pick some days without smartphones. This is amazing. We did some of that this year. We sat outside. We didn't have that. It's amazing when you do that. And if you never have done it before, it's probably going to be awkward at first because you won't know how to converse. And as you start to talk and you start to say, wow, this is conversation, it can be a helpful thing. Because if you have a crutch there or if you're always there with a distraction, you don't really get to interact with each other. But I think if you can do this some, it is amazing. After a while, you will pull conversation out of some people. And it's not always easy. If you have teenagers, sometimes they kind of are more withdrawn, where they're a little more private, so you have to kind of work to get it out of them. They'll give you the one-word answers. But then she's very good at stumbling up on something they're interested in, and then it's like you can't get them to shut up, because they're all of a sudden you hit that topic, and they're very interested in talking about that topic. So I think this is something we like to just encourage, and we try to do this, but if we had to go back, we'd probably do it more. So play games, have discussions, or have common interests as a family. Sounds so simple, you've heard it before. The challenge is, can you push the reset button and do it more? Now, I can like playing games or not like playing games, but when you actually do it, it is amazing that you do interact together when you force it and you get to do it. And a game could be a little game outside, a game could be a board game inside, it doesn't really matter. It's just the idea of doing something together. And also right there, having discussions of common interests. Do you have something you can talk about? Do you have something you can enjoy together? What is there that you guys are doing that you, as you intersect with life, you can have some conversations with? Some of you had good conversations about where you've been on vacation, or what you'd like to do. That could be a good topic. We enjoy those things. It was yesterday, I think, that she showed me a picture from 13 years ago yesterday, and this is the one where they're all soaking wet. We had some sort of rainstorm, and they're all out there, and they're so small, and they had come in, they're just all wet and muddy. And
they were sitting in the ditch was full of water. So they were sitting in the ditch and like making a dam with their bodies, and then the water was rushing all around them. It was a great memory.
Yeah, it was. It's a great memory. Because we did it.
Recreate that photo.
That's a great idea. That's a great. How many would like Dave, Pete, and Joe to recreate that photo? If you love your mother for Christmas, you could do that. That would be a great idea. Next, involve your children in chores. All right, this is again a topic people ask us a lot. Now, this just giving them chores that are age appropriate, I think, are good. At some point you can't tell your kid, hey, go wax the car. Your kids just learn how to walk. That's not good, but do it with them. I think it's always good to keep them busy. I think it's good to make them have the responsibility. I think it's good to teach them the accountability. I think it's good to say, hey, why is the trash taken out? We told you to do it. Why aren't the dishes washed? And in our family, she does not have any daughters. So when we work together, I know. And I'm saying this context to help you. So we all clean up the kitchen. So your stuff done, you clean the kitchen up. Because she doesn't get as much help. Now, we have all tried to help in the kitchen, although she criticizes my cooking. I don't understand why. Joey, though, is actually pretty good. So Joey's been working with them. That's right. That's it. You should do that more often. All right. So, but as you work together, we'll try to figure it out. All right. Volunteer chores. Next, implement a consistent sleep routine, and this is something that's super important to us, at least. I think if people don't get enough sleep, this is. And absolutely, you can do your own studies, and we have tried to study these things out. Also, if you don't have a consistent sleep routine, it does affect you. It affects your emotions, it affects how you act, it affects your patience, it affects your irritability, it affects all sorts of things. So we feel it's very good to have a rough time, where you go to bed, when you get up. All right, so that's kind of what we're throwing in.
Yeah, so of course we've all heard mothers who every time their child is a brat in public, they just say something like, oh, they're tired. And I'm not advocating that you blame tiredness every time your child misbehaves, but if you have your child on a fairly regular schedule, you know how much sleep that child needs, and if you mess up that schedule, then it really is your fault if a 2-year-old cannot handle the lack of sleep that you have given that kid.
I'll just say this because I thought it was funny. All of our kids are different. Pete was my one. If he would look at us and say, I'm tired, and he'd go up and take a nap. And he would just know, he was really little. Joe would not stop. So she still has a picture of Joe. We have this kind of a big padded ottoman downstairs. Joe is standing up with just his head on the ottoman, sound asleep. That's Joe. He wouldn't stop. He didn't. If you had to put him in a nap, it was like hold Joe down, and then he'd do it. But this time he was just running. He thought he was sleepy, but he just sit there and he would just put his head down like this, and he fell asleep standing up. But every kid is different. But you have a consistent sleep routine. And that routine should, in our opinion, should not be let them sleep in until 10 or 11 in the morning. We tend to say get up in the morning and go to bed on time. That's more we have done. You could disagree if you'd like that. We're both pretty early risers. Now our kids are early risers. So you can work with that. I still think it was funny that Dave got an alarm, and we made a huge deal out of Dave getting his own alarm. And you got to get up when you get your own alarm clock. You got to be responsible. Get up. Oh, I can do it. Okay, so we get him an alarm. He did pretty well. Then Pete, made a big deal, and then Joey kept begging us. I'm ready for an alarm. I'm ready for an alarm. We're just like, Joe, you're so little. But we said, fine. All right, you got to get up on time and alarm. Then Dave and Pete were like, Joe, turn your alarm off and get up in the morning. Beep, beep. Instead of beeping. And he tried to set it up early, so it was funny. So you can razz Joe about that as well. All right, teach responsibility and independence. This is something, the next one kind of goes with it. So I'll just sort of, at the same time as we talk about it, do not solve all the problems for them. Teach responsibility means give them responsibility and let them do it. This is tough because sometimes you have to say it's not good enough, they have to do it again. Sometimes you have to say, for their age, that's all they can do, which is her. And washing dishes, kids are little, washing dishes, this is not amazing, like it's good enough. I'll use that dish, it's okay. But you have to teach them responsibility and independence. You have to let them have some of that independence. You're really enjoying this. I don't know, you're really enjoying this. All right.
This happened yesterday.
Joe had a little kid over that did a couple things, and that was the one he watched. So we'll have to see what we got there. And I'm going to pick it up. All right. That goes with don't solve the problems for them. Sometimes you see, a kid. When I say a little kid, I'm not talking a toddler. They can't do anything. But even a toddler, they can help carry some of their stuff. But you see a mom, and she has a bag. She has their backpack. She has all their stuff. And the kid, is in grade school and just running around without any responsibility. The kid should be carrying stuff. The kid should be helping. The kid needs to make sure they do things. If you hand the kid an orange and they're capable of peeling an orange, let them peel the orange. If they're capable of cutting up their food, let them cut up the food. I keep joking that at some point, if I didn't stop her, I would be 60 and she would be over there cutting up my meat for me. Like, let me alone, right? You have to draw the line somewhere. But she likes to kind of nurture, and sometimes you're like, hey, stop. We got it. All right, so you have to sometimes let them solve their own problems, and teach responsibility and independence. And it can be hard. It can be hard watching them struggle. I tell you what, probably the hardest thing for me was watching them tie their shoes. I hated waiting to leave, and they'd try to tie their shoes. And I'd be just tying it. And I don't know which one of our kids, but they would just go, it doesn't work. It does work. You do it this way. But it was hard. They always put them on right when you're trying to leave and you're ready to go. And I'm just like, just grab shoes, let's go. And she, no, you gotta teach them. We don't have time. But that was the hardest thing for me. You're ready to say something? No, go on.
It kind of also blends into things that are more difficult than tying your shoes. For the most part, our kids have had great experiences with their school teachers. But we have had a time or two where there was a difficult teacher. And one in particular, it was not abusive. I'm not saying that, but it was there was a definite bias in the classroom, and we had to teach them, you can't fix this, and here's how you treat that teacher. Here is what you learn from that. You learn that you don't act when you're an adult and you are in charge. This is how you don't act, and that was hard because I wanted to go to the principal and spout off exactly what I thought, but it wasn't the right situation to do that. I needed to learn to let my kids deal with difficulty and not bail them out.
That can be hard. And as kids have to deal some of their own issues, their own struggles, you can guide or coach and say, hey, here's some suggestions of what you can do. But it is hard not to always take over and do it for them and try to help them. And it's been good, and sometimes some of their proudest moments are when they've overcome some of those type things. But even when, if they make a mess in the house, they clean it up. If they don't pick their toys up, then you take them in there and say, you're not getting one more toy. Out, until those are gone. And you have to be strict, and as I said a few minutes ago, if you're super strict when they're really little, they just do it when they're older. And I'm not bragging, I'm just, that's how it is. Their mind is trained. This is the boundary I'm going to do. By the time they hit 3 or 4 or 5 years of age, you can do it without having really to tell them, hey guys, go clean your room. They can clean your room. They can go pick it up. Hey guys, go make sure the trash is out. So I think that's amazing. We'll keep going. And then we've got to teach them to wait and delay gratification. This is just a principle all of us need to learn. Just like why people get credit card debt now, it's why people can make rush decisions and quit a job when they have one bad day, it's why you have all those things. Sometimes you need delayed gratification. Sometimes you need to say, you know what, I shouldn't eat this now because it's not good for me, I'll put it off. Delayed gratification. It's a very difficult principle, and some adults have not learned it, but it's helpful for every kid to learn that. That's not as fun a one, so we'll skip on that one. All right. Do not use technology as a cure for boredom. Kids need sometimes to be bored. You know why? Because they need to learn to be creative, need to think, they need to solve their own problems. And if they're too hyped up all the time on the next innovation, the next thing on their phone, the next video game, they're never going to take time to actually think or study or read or engage or take a walk. So make sure the instant they're bored. Now, I didn't like it. My mom, if I ever said I was bored, she'd say, well, go pray and read your Bible then. I'm like, oh, Lord, okay. But sometimes when people are bored, that's what stimulates their mind to work. And they solve their own problem. So do it. Give them a book. Now we incentivize reading pretty heavily. If you read this book, then we would do it. And we would give a ton of money. We'd give them opportunities, give them little things. But you can do that. Incentivize, because teaching them to be in their own world and read, to me, is healthy. And many people have proven that does stimulate the mind. It actually helps people to develop and become the best they can be with their acumen and their intelligence level. Become an emotional trainer for your children. They're watching you model. You have to help them with their emotions and teaching them, and I'll teach again later on this. But as you coach them through their emotions, it's being a sounding board pretty much. It's listening to them, understanding their emotions, but sometimes you tell them, hey, is that really acceptable? You have to help them deal with their emotions. Some kids are so unbelievably erratic all the time in their emotions. They cry the second they don't get their way. They cry the second they lose, hey guys, who can pick their toys at first? Oh, you won. The kid just falls apart crying. They can't handle it. That's an emotional problem. You have to help them deal with that. And you have to make sure they don't get one thing they want and they throw a fit. You have to deal with that. Again, I'll talk more later. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it also means when they tell you something that's kind of horrifying, that you can't react emotionally either. It's learning how to control your own self. So if they confess something or tell you something that happened at school or wherever, that you can stay even and not overreact, because once you overreact, they're never going to tell you those things again.
And you aren't perfect. If you do make a mistake or they tell you something, just say, hey, you know what, I shouldn't have done that. And admit, when you make a mistake, admit your error. They'll try to cover it up and be so arrogant and say you never make a mistake as a parent. You make a ton, you know it. So admit it. It teaches them humility. It teaches them they need to do that. You're modeling that for them. But yeah, if you do that, and we have tried for kids to come and say, man, something terrible happened, we try to psych yourself, okay? And just listen. If you start saying, oh no, are you kidding me? You overreact, and it makes them either pull back or shut down, or makes them get that emotional as well. So we have tried to work at that, and I know we got 2, and then we're done. Teach them social skills and to speak to others. This is probably one of our kind of pet things we like. We have tried. I'm not saying we've done it well. We have tried. We don't like when we talk to kids and they have no idea how to relate and talk to adults. I feel like you're helping them. So we have to tell our kids, they're little. You treat people with respect, you treat it back. Someone asks how you're doing, treat them with respect. Look them in the eye, answer their question, ask them how they're doing. This is not necessarily easy, and we've had all boys, so I understand all of that. But one of the probably the most frequent compliments we have gotten is, your kids come up and talk to us and treat us like adults, and I feel that way. So that's something we've intentionally tried to do. Do you have a perspective on that? Because it is not always easy, believe me. when they're little and they don't want to, and you just have to talk to them and practice, but it's, one thing that impressed me, I'll say this, on the airplane coming back from vacation, we were all split up. Why the airline did that, we all signed up in a row, and they say they want us to be, separate, and then they split us all up on these flights. Very smart. All right, so anyway, we're all split. Well, Joey was sitting kind of over back, but on every flight, and you did have to wear the mask, you had all those things, but I watched them engage, and I watched Joey engage on the way back with a middle-aged lady. He walked in and said, hey, what's your name? How are you? And they were having a conversation, and it didn't last the whole flight. Sometimes with Joey it will last the whole flight, but you have that. But I looked and I thought, what, I'm proud of him. Because he doesn't have much in common. He doesn't have any reason to talk to him, but you do. When you do that, people respect you because you respect them. And everyone is a likable situation. So in that case, I was glad we had put the work in, which is what it is, very last. You have to somehow connect emotionally to them. This means some people are just say, I'm not an emotional person. I'm not talking here about the emotions of, crying all the time. I'm talking about the emotion of just touching them, physically touching, just reaching out, give them a hug, pat them on the back, tell them they did a good job, connect to them, understand what they need. Don't be so emotionally distant from your children they never feel loved by you. Some people really need that emotional connection. You have to make sure you do that. So, especially our kids are little, you have to make sure you're very much affectionate with them, lots of hugs, lots of, let me hold your hand, take you down this path, let me put your arm around you, let me hold you while you're sleeping, put your head on my shoulder while you're sleeping, I'll carry you around. There's a lot of that. I think some parents are scared of that for some reason, and that's something we've also tried to do very intentionally, and we're very glad we do it.
Right, and even still today, my boys are not embarrassed to hug me in public. We never leave each other or see each other again without sharing a hug. And for our family, that's been important.
And for you to decide, but if you have zero connection, emotional, I feel like that touch, there is going to be something missing. So how affectionate are not, everyone has their own scale, that's fine. But if you do none, it's been proven, it does create some sort of baggage in that person, and to overcome that. So just some thoughts, hopefully it's helpful, practical.